And with us this morning to review the papers is the editor of Spike, Tom Slater, and the journalist and author, Janelle Aldred. There they are. Good to see you again, guys. Thanks for joining us. Janelle, we're starting with you. This heartbreaking story from the Express that you pulled out, that 14,000 people will spend Christmas in hospital simply because there's nowhere else for them to go, even though they're medically fit to go home. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. And last Christmas, there were over 9,000 people who couldn't go home despite being medically fit and well. The issue is that people can't be released home because often there's no social care package, which could look like district nurses or other people coming to their homes to check in on them. And this seems to be a systemic problem. So if we're at 9,000 last year, we're at 14,000 this year. We see that it's a problem that's actually getting worse. So there are calls for a fully funded scheme to recruit and retain people in the social care work sector, because there's some 165,000 vacancies in the social care work. So this is a backlog issue again of a system that seems to be a little bit broken. There's 130,000 vacancies in the NHS. So it's not hard to see how that then translates into people can't be moved home because they haven't worked out if it's safe for them to be at home. I know that once when my grandma was in hospital, she couldn't come home because they had to just work out, is she all right? She's medically fit, but is she okay to stay? Is there someone who can come and check in? And all of those things, and that has to be put in place before you send people home. So definitely heartbreaking and sad. We know that loneliness is an issue, and imagine being separated from your family or unable to leave hospital, not because you can't, but just because there's nothing in place. And I think the government really needs to think about how they are going to recruit and backfill these vacancies and also retain people. I think with the ongoing strike talk and pay talks, it doesn't look like an attractive job to go to, if I'm honest. And we really need to think about how we change the narrative around these really vital jobs, but also make sure that the jobs pay so that people want to join and that people are actually able to stay. Because actually I think people do want vocational jobs, but if it doesn't work out financially because you can't even look after yourself, then I think that's something that needs to be addressed, and very, very quickly.
Yeah, certainly, especially with all the pressure that's on the healthcare system at the moment. Having people in hospital that don't need to be there is not, I'm sure, something they want to see. On to you, Tom. Also, another article in the Express, page 19, an article about the Just Stop Oil protests that have been taking place. Quite an interesting take here from the Express.
Yeah, so this piece here is sort of digging into the sort of ideology of this group. I think this was probably the week where a lot of people's patience with these environmental protesters started to run out. I know there was quite a frosty exchange on Sky the other day between Mark Austin and the slightly improbably named Indigo Rumbelow. But I think what we're getting into here is more about, aside from their tactics, what do these people actually think? And this is something I've been looking into myself this week. People like Roger Hallam, who's a founder of Extinction Rebellion, very much involved in Just Stop Oil. The sorts of things that they think are really quite extreme in many respects. So Hallam thinks that 6 billion people are going to die by the end of the century, which no one credible actually really believes. He's posted videos directly addressed to young people, which I won't give too many of the gory details, but basically painting a kind of hellscape image of what will happen if we allow climate change to get out of control, that you would basically have murder and all sorts of horrendous things taking place that young people would have to bear witness to. And I think given that, it shouldn't be too much of a surprise that you see some young adults standing over gantries on the M25, holding back tears, saying that they haven't got a future. I think what we're starting to realise is that these sorts of groups are not concerned about climate change. They're kind of hysterical about climate change. They're quite apocalyptic about this particular issue. And I think what we have here is a kind of quite deep misanthropy, discomfort with sort of modern life. This isn't your kind of garden variety person who's worried about, pollution in the local river or whatever. It's something a little bit different, a little bit more extreme. And I think that we're starting to see a bit more of a reckoning with that recently, as I say, at this point now that people's patience has really worn thin with these groups of protesters and their tactics.
Certainly, interesting analysis from you there, Tom. Slight gear change, Janelle, back to I'm a Celebrity in the Australian Jungle. Little surprised that the Mirror is leading on this story today. It's right up their street, isn't it? But you pulled out a story from the inside showing the Coronation Street star Sue Cleaver, who's talked about a chance meeting with her mother.
Yeah, such a heartwarming story in what is frankly quite doom and gloom everywhere at the moment. But Sue Cleaver, she was saying that acting saved her life, and she was adopted, and she said that she took on a part as a young actor in a local show, and a man there, another actor, says to her, "You look like the dead ringer of my wife." And she said, "Okay." And he asked her, "When's your date of birth?" She said she was adopted. "When's your date of birth?" She tells him, and he goes back, contacts his wife, and that is actually her mum. I mean, you don't really hear stories like that all the time, and she said that for her, she then got to meet her birth mother, and she said she actually seen the picture of her mum at the same age she was, dead ringer for her, which is why the man recognised her immediately. And she said it's been a very positive experience building a relationship with her birth mother after that. So, sometimes these stories don't always end in that rather spectacular way, but it was really nice to hear a heartwarming story coming out of the jungle amidst all the other things that's going on in there and in the world, that this really chance coincidence meeting led to her being reunited with her birth family.
And just staying on I'm a Celebrity for a second, if we may, Tom's, given it's such a talking point, not just this morning, but it has been all week, of course, with the former Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, taking part. There's a lot of people with a lot of strong views about his participation, not least because Parliament is still sitting. And he's been getting a bit of a tough time from his fellow campmates, hasn't he?
Oh, certainly. There's been people putting him under pressure, asking about, how do you not understand that it's a slap in the face when you come into this environment, that you're trying to kind of whitewash your record. And he's spoken quite openly about how he's kind of seeking forgiveness in one way, shape or another. And ultimately, I think it's a kind of sign of the times that supposedly serious politicians, that they feel that the need to go on these particular shows. I feel like it's a type of politician which is more interested in kind of public image rather than getting the job done. But at the same time, I think, I think it could easily be a situation in which there's almost a bit of sympathy for Matt Hancock, which is a sentence I never thought I'd utter, just because of the sort of, the onslaught on him has been so intense. And me personally, I think a lot of people are like this at the moment, where he's sort of taken enough of a punishment beating, and he's more of a kind of silly figure now more than anyone else. So not to ignore the bad things he did in office, which are considerable, I think it's just the fact that all of it just feels like a bit of a circus by this point, really.
It'll be interesting, won't it, whether to see if people start rooting for him. And just briefly, Tom, you also picked out the front page of the Times story about care homes. Briefly on that, please.
Yes, exactly, very quickly. So it's good news insofar as care homes and hospitals are going to be forced to allow visitors back in there. There were hundreds which weren't allowing any people at all, which, considering how that can really affect people's health and mental health, this is certainly good news, I would say.
Well, Janelle Aldred and Tom Slater, it's been really fascinating to talk to you about all of those stories in the papers today. Certainly a good mix anyway, and certainly lots of interesting delicacies for Matt Hancock to taste in his time in the jungle. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
You're watching Sky News Breakfast. Coming up next, we'll have all the latest from Ukraine, our top story this morning, as residents in the newly liberated city of Kherson celebrate the withdrawal of Russian troops. Sky's Alex Rossi has arrived this morning.